You step into a cave near Casablanca. The air smells of damp stone. Something moves beyond the entrance. Not a person, a large carnivore. You tighten your grip on a stone tool. But you are not Homo sapiens. You are not a Neanderthal. You are not a Denisovan. You lived before those names existed, roughly 773,000 years before the present. And your bones may sit near one of the most important splits in human history. Today, Casablanca is a city of millions. Back then, its Atlantic edge looked completely different. Sea levels moved. Dunes advanced. Savannas expanded during wetter periods. A cave opened inside an ancient coastal formation. Then sediment slowly filled it. The entrance eventually sealed. Inside were jaws, teeth, vertebrae, a thigh bone, small pieces of people who disappeared before our species began. For decades, their age remained uncertain. That uncertainty mattered, because genetics has already pointed toward a missing chapter. The ancestors of modern humans separate from the ancestors of Neanderthals and Denisovans somewhere around 765,000 to 550,000 years ago. That is a huge window. But it is still a window, and Africa had almost no securely dated human fossils inside it. From roughly 1 million to 600,000 years ago, the record went strangely quiet. The family tree had branches, the DNA could see them, but the fossils were missing. Then a team led by Jean-Jacques Hublin looked again at a cave called Grotte Hominidés. The name simply means Cave of Hominids. It sits within Thomas Quarry I, a limestone quarry in southwestern Casablanca. The story began in 1969. An amateur collector named Philippe Berriro found part of a human lower jaw. It lay below the cave beside animal fossils and stone tools. The fossil was first described as Atlanthropus mauritanicus, a dramatic name for a mysterious North African human. But the jaw had lost its original position. Quarrying had disturbed the slope. Without a precise layer, its age remained difficult to prove. That changed after 1994. Moroccan and international teams began controlled excavations inside the cave. They recorded where each object appeared. They mapped the sediment. They recovered more human remains. And those remains came from intact layers. The fossils represented at least 2 adults and 1 young child. One adult jaw was nearly complete. Its teeth were still in place. Another adult jaw was larger and more robust. The child preserved part of a lower jaw. Dental development placed the child at no more than 1.5 years old. 8 vertebrae were associated with 1 adult. Several isolated teeth appeared nearby. A fragment of a human femur came from deeper in the cavity. That femur carried tooth marks, not from another human, from a large carnivore, probably a hyena. The cave was not simply a home. It was mostly a predator den. Researchers found abundant carnivore remains. They found fossil droppings. They found animal bones modified by carnivore teeth. They found very few stone artifacts compared with the bones, and they found no cut marks on that animal assemblage. The humans probably entered only occasionally, sometimes alive, sometimes perhaps not. So how do you date a cave this old? Not with carbon dating. Radiocarbon becomes useless far earlier. Instead, the team used magnetostratigraphy, a long word for a simple idea. Earth's magnetic field has flipped many times. North becomes south, south becomes north. Tiny magnetic minerals inside sediment record the direction. Each layer becomes a page in a planetary diary. The team added 119 new magnetic samples. Those joined 62 samples from earlier work. The sequence captured a famous reversal, the Matuyama-Brunhes transition. That reversal centers near 773,000 years ago. The cave sediments recorded the change from reversed polarity to normal polarity. The human fossils sat close to that transition. The resulting age was about 773,000 years, with an uncertainty of roughly 4,000 years. That is unusually precise for this period. The date changed everything. These were not vague Middle Pleistocene humans. They lived near the genetic split itself, but age alone cannot place a fossil on a family tree. Bones must also carry the right pattern. And these bones carried several patterns at once. The adult jaw was long, low, narrow. Its chin area sloped backward. That looked primitive, closer to Homo erectus. Homo erectus means upright human. It describes a broad group that appeared in Africa roughly 2 million years ago. But other details look different. The inside of the jaw lacked some heavy, bony ridges common in earlier humans. Parts of the jaw joint region resembled later Homo sapiens. The chewing muscle attachment was unexpectedly shallow. Some tooth roots fell near early modern human shapes. Others remained close to Homo erectus. The third molars were strongly reduced. That pattern is more common in Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, and another ancient group called Homo antecessor. Even the hidden boundary inside each tooth mattered. Researchers call it the enamel-dentine junction. That is simply the surface where hard enamel meets softer dentine. Enamel can wear away. The inner junction keeps the original developmental shape. Using micro-CT scans, the team compared that hidden shape across fossil groups. Again, the Casablanca teeth refused one simple label. Some features were primitive, some looked closer to later humans, some overlapped with Neanderthals. This is called mosaic evolution, a fancy way of saying evolution changes different body parts at different speeds. You do not become a new species all at once. Your jaw may keep an old shape. Your teeth may shift earlier, your face may change later. Evolution edits in pieces. That mosaic becomes even stranger when you cross the Strait of Gibraltar. In northern Spain, the Grandolina cave holds fossils of Homo antecessor. They come from a layer called TD6. Those fossils date between roughly 950,000 and 770,000 years ago, almost the same moment. In 1997, José María Bermúdez de Castro and colleagues proposed Homo antecessor as a possible ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans. Later evidence changed that picture. In 2020, Frido Welker and colleagues recovered ancient proteins from Homo antecessor tooth enamel. Proteins survive longer than DNA. Their analysis placed Homo antecessor as a close sister lineage to the common ancestor of modern humans, Neanderthals and Denisovans. Close, but not necessarily the ancestor itself. The Casablanca fossils now add the African side. The Spanish and Moroccan humans shared some jaw and tooth traits. That raises a tempting possibility. Perhaps populations sometimes cross between North Africa and Europe. The Strait of Gibraltar is narrow today, but a connection remains unproven. Similar anatomy can appear through shared ancestry. It can also appear through parallel evolution. Still, the differences are just as important. The Spanish fossils show more features leaning toward the later Neanderthal pattern. The Moroccan fossils look more basal to the Homo sapiens lineage. Basal does not mean primitive or inferior. It means close to the root of a branch. That root matters because ancient DNA had already drawn a rough timeline. In 2016, Matthias Meyer and colleagues recovered nuclear DNA from fossils at Cima de los Huesos in Spain. Those humans lived about 430,000 years ago. Their nuclear DNA connected them more closely to Neanderthals than Denisovans. That meant the Neanderthal and Denisovan populations had already separated before 430,000 years ago. Other genome studies place the earlier split from modern human ancestors between about 765,000 and 550,000 years ago. Now place the Casablanca fossils on that clock, 773,000 years, almost exactly at the opening edge. That does not prove these people were your direct ancestors. It does something more careful and more powerful. It places an African population near the moment when the major lineages were differentiating. Their anatomy fits that position. Primitive traits remain. Later traits are beginning to appear. The European population already looks somewhat different. The African population leans toward the branch that eventually produced Homo sapiens. Then comes the real twist. These fossils are not a missing link. They show why the missing link idea is wrong. A missing link imagines one creature, one species, one neat bridge between two finished forms. Human evolution did not work like that. There was no single file of ancestors marching towards you. There were populations. They spread. They separated. They reconnected. They adapted to different regions. Some traits moved quickly. Others stayed for hundreds of thousands of years. Several populations may have stood close to the same branching event, one in North Africa, one in Europe. Others still undiscovered. The ancestor you were looking for no fit one clean species name. It never-shifting population spread across landscapes. That idea also changes how you picture Africa, not as one tiny birthplace, not as a single point on a map. In 2017, Hublin and colleagues described early Homo sapiens fossils from Jebel Irhoud in Morocco. Thermoluminescence dating placed the site at 315,000 years, with an uncertainty of 34,000 years. Those fossils combined a modern-looking face with a more elongated brain case. Another mosaic. The researchers argued for a Pan-African origin of Homo sapiens. Pan-African means the process involved populations across the continent. The Casablanca fossils reach nearly 460,000 years deeper. They do not look like Homo sapiens. They should not. They lived long before Homo sapiens emerged. But they show that the ancestral African story was already unfolding, far earlier than the Jebel Irhoud faces. You move along a north-lost world, the North African coast. The climate is semi-arid, but wetter cycles periodically open green corridors through the Sahara. Animals move across those corridors, so do humans. Your body proportions are broadly familiar. Your brain is smaller than a modern human brain. You carry an Acheulean tool, a shaped stone with two worked faces. The technology had existed in the Casablanca region for hundreds of thousands of years. You know if it were stone fractures cleanly. You know which animals are dangerous. You know that the cave ahead offers shelter. You also know it smells wrong. Hyena droppings cover the floor. Bones collect in dark corners. A predator may return. The fossil record does not preserve your thoughts. It preserves consequences. A child died. Adults died. One thigh bone was gnawed. Sediment covered what remained. The magnetic field flipped. The cave sealed. Then 773,000 years passed. What survived was not a complete skull, not a heroic skeleton. Just enough anatomy to expose the shape of a branching world. That is why these fossils rewrite human origins. They strengthen an African ancestry for Homo sapiens. They place North Africa near a crucial evolutionary crossroads. They connect fossil anatomy with genetic timing, and they reveal regional differences earlier than expected. But they do not simplify your family tree. They make it more honest. Your ancestry was never a ladder. Child. It was a braided river, channels divided, some dried out, some joined again. The water reaching you traveled through many paths. You carry the result inside your body, not as a pure line. As a mosaic, your face came from one long history. Your teeth preserve another. Your genome carries encounters with vanished humans. Even the word human becomes harder to fence. Those people in Casablanca were not you, but they were not irrelevant strangers. They stood near the population history that eventually made you possible. That should feel humbling. Your species did not appear fully formed. No ancestor crossed a finish line. No fossil woke up modern. Small changes accumulated inside ordinary lives. A jaw grew slightly narrower. A tooth root shifted. A population separated. A climate corridor reopened. A child was carried into a cave. History moved through details too small to notice. Then enough details survived, and Quarry and Casablanca gave them back. You step out of the cave. The predator is still somewhere behind you. You do not know your branch will survive. You do not know branches even exist. You only know the next day matters. 773,000 years later, it still does.